What's up everyone? In this video we're doing a deep dive for season 2 episode 2 of House of the Dragon titled Rhaenyra the Cruel. This was a 73-minute episode, so plenty of stuff to cover. The episode is mainly about the fallout from the brutal murder of young Jaehaerys. Daemon's impulsive act has not only caused major trauma to the Greens, but it's also set Rhaenyra's own cause back. Fucking Daemon, man. By the way, we have deep dives for all of season 1, and we cover the first episode of season 2 as well, so check those out if you haven't yet. No time to waste, let's get going. We're gonna split up this video into two perspectives, the Blacks and the Greens. Since the Greens just lost a young son, let's start with their side of the story first. So as news of Jaehaerys' murder gets out, all the servants and workers of the Red Keep are herded for questioning. Aegon has completely lost it and is destroying Viserys' model of old Valyria in frustration. Alicent is racked with both guilt and shame since she had Criston Cole occupied, leaving no protection for Helena's children.
Aemond is going to feel slightly responsible too for some obvious reasons. Last episode did well to ground Jaehaerys as the only person Aegon really gave a shit about. Part of that is selfish and rooted in the misogyny of the firstborn son tradition, but hey, that still counts as something.
Otto remains ruthlessly calm and wants to make the most of Jaehaerys' death. Aegon starts questioning all the members of the council to see where they were when this went down, and Cole says he was in bed. Technically, he's not lying. Larys says that the guards have caught blood. He was fleeing with Jaehaerys' head in a sack. Otto's plan is to publicly blame Rhaenyra for this, paint her out as a ruthless, vile villain, slayer of infants. He wants to hold a public funeral and show Jaehaerys' body to all of King's Landing. He insists that both Alicent and Helaena be present in the procession to further strike the emotional chord.
And if you look back, that fissure between Otto and Aegon started last episode, but we can see why he's slowly getting fed up with Grandpa Hightower.
You controlled your father the same way.
Plotting a politically motivated stunt/funeral mere hours after the kid was murdered reveals the cold-hearted chops Otto specializes in. He's the guy in a game of Monopoly that suddenly owns all the best properties and is trying to extort you whenever you land on Boardwalk.
Some good may yet come of this.
Helaena is in pure shock. Fia Sabin, I think that's how you pronounce it, does such a great job portraying Helaena. She obviously doesn't want to do the public funeral, but Alicent tells her that it's her duty. Alicent is also worried about Helaena catching her banging Cole, but Helaena isn't thinking about it at all.
What's being demanded of her right after she sees her toddler-age son murdered is unfathomable. You can tell that acting as Otto's political surrogate is taking a bit of a toll on Alicent too, but she is still doing it to the detriment of her own children even though she's reluctant.
We get a quick interrogation scene between Larys and Blood. Blood folds right away. He says he was hired by Daemon and his accomplice was a rat catcher whose name he doesn't know. Once the info is given up, Aegon comes in and just beats Blood to death with a metal club.
Last episode I was cool with not seeing Jaehaerys' death, but I felt a little shortchanged by only seeing Aegon land one swing on him. Maybe it's the mass desensitization of the modern TV viewer, but I wanted to see him pay a little bit.
So the actual funeral procession is held and it's a tough watch. They got young Jaehaerys' head stitched onto his body. At one point the wagon gets stuck and it almost seemed like the head might roll off. They got this one dude yelling out, "Behold the works of Rhaenyra Targaryen," and just basically shitting on her and blaming her. It's highly effective and the small folk quickly rally around Helaena. Although Helaena is beyond freaked out by all of these strangers trying to touch her, they're also throwing some herbs on her. Looks like weed.
With all that's going on right now, this scene gives us some more insight into the relationship between the royalty and the small folk in King's Landing too. Helaena is the only person who makes the right read that this situation was not worth the investment.
I don't want to.
She is often the voice of reason, people just don't pay much attention to her, which is sad.
As for Cole, he knows that him taking a play off resulted in the young prince's death, and since he's a bitch, he can't take accountability and instead finds a way to blame our boy A. Cole says that A must be a spy since his brother E went to Rhaenyra's side. He then tells A that if he wants to redeem himself, he needs to go slay Rhaenyra. Since nobody can tell the difference between the Eric twins, Cole wants A to infiltrate Dragonstone and assassinate Rhaenyra all by himself. It's a clear death mission, but A is an honorable man and obeys his Lord Commander. Typical Cole deflecting blame to others when he's the one to blame.
Yeah, he's never been the best at channeling emotions after a romantic fallout. Essentially projects all of his own insecurities onto A. The plan to pull off a twin swap is so damn ridiculous that it just might work.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Aemond is processing all of this differently. He's at a brothel on the Street of Silk, curled up naked with the same madame from season 1 episode 9. He feels slightly guilty about Luke's death, but he's more honored that Daemon views him as such a threat that he would try and have him assassinated. Also, there's this whole mommy dynamic going on where Aemond clearly has sex with this woman, but also views her as a mommy figure.
As the second-born son, he's often left looking for love in all the wrong places. You actually feel something for the guy here, and he's learning about the consequences of his own actions. We've come a long way, man.
After hearing that Blood's accomplice was a rat catcher, Aegon goes scorched earth and hangs all of the castle's rat catchers. Cheese is dead, but there are many innocent men who are killed, and their families are devastated and now will hate Aegon. Very brash and unnecessary move by Aegon. This pisses off Otto, and he's appalled at Aegon's foolishness. He scolds Aegon for being an impatient fool. They had all of the small folk on their side after Jaehaerys' murder, but now Aegon murdering innocent men will turn some of the people against them.
This is never good for a kingdom on the brink of war, especially with the lack of food from the embargo. Also, shout out to Kieran Bew, aka Big Bill from Warrior. He and his family do a great job setting the tone of what the small folk are going through at this time without using a whole lot of screen time. Otto claiming the blood of Jaehaerys as the price they paid to win an advantage is a bit cold and overly pragmatic. That's one of his biggest assets as a hand, but it's also a double-edged sword.
Aegon's rebuttal is that at least he did something. He then says even Criston Cole has done something, and this prompts such a look of disgust and disappointment from Otto. He knows that Cole is also an impulsive, dumb fuck. He finds out about Cole sending Eric to assassinate Rhaenyra, and the plan is so stupid that Otto is just like, we're fucked. It's so bad that Otto wishes that Viserys was still alive. When Aegon mentions that Viserys chose him to be the heir, Otto just laughs at that naivete. Aegon then fires Otto and makes Cole his hand. Oh boy, the Greens are spiraling fast. This is how it feels when you're rooting for a sports team and their front office is run by idiots. Not much else you can do but watch it all burn. Cole running a masterclass in how to fail upwards.
Normally I don't like this guy, but anybody who starts roasting Cole is a friend of mine. The slow turn and eye roll had Dennis Reynolds written all over it. This feels like the moment where Otto finally admits to himself that he just can't take it anymore. He's been trying to hold this together from a political sense, but Aegon's just not king material. He's been trying to get this kid into line for like a decade now. The line after Aegon talks about Viserys naming him king was also so devious.
Is that what you think?
Cola's hand is a crazy move, mentally unstable and sleeping with your mom, but he's now the second most powerful person in King's Landing because he helped win a few minor battles back in the day and sent Sir Eric to reenact the Parent Trap.
After Otto's firing, he talks shop with Alicent. Both of them are worried about this Aegon-Cole partnership because they are two of the most emotional, dumb people in the show. Alicent thinks that she can still salvage Aegon. Otto says he's got to get out of here. He wants to return to Old Town, but Alicent tells him to go to Highgarden and work with the Tyrells. She'll try and talk some sense into Aegon and let Otto back in the fold. It's up to father-daughter to keep the ship steady. Alicent does try to confess her sins to Otto, but he just wants no part of it. Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, Otto's down, but he's not out. It'll be interesting to see what he can pull off with Daemon. It looks like he'll be sidelined for quite some time though, since that actor hasn't even been cast yet. Alicent is going to be left to handle what he started off. She becomes the de facto co-hand since Cole has such limited experience with domestic affairs. Her main job is going to be keeping Larys' influence on Aegon at bay here. You cannot let this guy creep back in after he kind of orchestrated Otto's departure from the shadows.
Alicent leaves the meeting with Otto and sees Aegon crying. I think at first she was planning on scolding him for firing Otto, but she decides to give him space. Hey, maybe she should have then tried to comfort her son, but then again, what do I know about parenthood? There are far more important things to do than comfort your own son over the brutal beheading of his child, like having rough sex with Criston Cole. And that's exactly what happens. With Alicent hitting Cole a few times and then having sex with him, Alicent sounds like the easiest Tinder bang of all time. Set that filter to 35+ and look for the recent divorcees. Alright, now it's time to go cover what's going on with the Blacks. Other than Daemon, no one else on the side of the Blacks knew about this terrible scheme, so Rhaenyra is devastated as she finds out all of this firsthand. First of all, Helaena is innocent and Rhaenyra would never target her. Second of all, everyone in the realm now thinks that she's a baby killer. On top of that, there are members of her own council who suspect that maybe she was the one behind the attack. Daemon says nothing during the council meeting, but it's clear that he's the culprit. Both Rhaenyra and Rhaenys take one look at him, and the answer becomes obvious. Rhaenyra and Daemon have a heated argument when they are alone. Rhaenyra is pissed that Daemon would greenlight such a vile act, and she finally realizes that Daemon simply doesn't want to take her orders. He undermines her whenever he feels like it, and he won't submit to anyone, and she simply can't trust him anymore. Daemon claims that he served her faithfully this entire time. He's the one who physically put the crown on her head. In Daemon's mind, Viserys didn't choose him as a successor because he was worried that Daemon would be a better king. Rhaenyra thinks that's absurd. Viserys simply didn't trust him, and why would he? It's clear that Daemon serves no one. He storms off and flies off with Caraxes. Perhaps he's headed to Harrenhal, that would be my guess, but nobody can be truly sure with this guy.
One of the downsides to having Daemon as your second in command is that his pursuit of absolute revenge is never surgical. It's blunt force. He didn't think any of this through in terms of the consequences, and that shit-eating smirk during the council meeting, like, man, you know what you did. Both of them weaponized Viserys during the convo, though Rhaenyra's is the only one that seems grounded in reality. Viserys and Daemon didn't have the most stable relationship. The lack of trust anyone has for him is understandable. However, Rhaenyra kind of knew what she was signing up for when she married him. It wasn't like the scouting report hadn't come out on this guy yet. She had to make a semi-desperate move just to keep up with the Greens. The silver lining is that Daemon has a brand new kind of motivation heading into Harrenhal.
Rhaenyra knows that revenge will be on its way, so she has Baela take her dragon Moondancer to stake out King's Landing. She needs to stay high to avoid being spotted. There is an interesting storyline that we should cover that's developing in Driftmark, and it involves Alyn and his brother Adam. Alyn isn't interested in sailing with Corlys into war, but Adam would relish an opportunity to sail alongside the Sea Snake and fight for glory. Later on, when Adam is digging for clams and crabs, he sees a wild dragon flying overhead. This piques Adam's interest, and he stares at the dragon longingly. Potential new rider on the horizon?
Yeah, pretty sure that's Sea Smoke, who we know has been riderless since Rhaenyra took off. And I like the dynamic between these two, the calm older brother and the plucky younger one. The "he owes us" line should clue us in that they're not just a couple of average common folk. There could be a deeper connection to Corlys here than meets the eye.
With Daemon away, Mysaria has no advocates, and Rhaenyra calls her into the room to speak with her. Mysaria admits that she aided Otto in finding Aegon, but she says that it was inevitable. She regrets what she did, especially since Otto burned down her home and everything she worked for. Her and Rhaenyra have this interrogation / heart-to-heart / argument type of thing. Lots of tension here, potentially sexually. Rhaenyra remembers Mysaria from years ago when Daemon occupied Dragonstone and said that she was pregnant. They both slightly bond over how much of an asshole Daemon is. At first, Rhaenyra says that Mysaria is a potential threat, so she cannot let her go. But Rhaenyra comes around. Since Daemon gave Mysaria his word that she would be freed for the intel on Blood and Cheese, Rhaenyra does agree to free her. There is a ship heading to Myr, and Rhaenyra will get Mysaria passage on the ship. This is a touching moment for Mysaria. On the way down to the harbor, she sees our man A walking up. She knows that it's not E, since she was just with him and Rhaenyra. Mysaria is smart, so she immediately knows that something is wrong, and she turns back to swiftly notify a guard.
They find their common ground regarding Daemon. They've both been burned by him a time or two, and we get a little more commentary on men acting as the primary controlling factors, regardless of where you go in King's Landing. Her kindness and just actions remind me of Viserys, and it clearly has an impact on Mysaria too.
This brings us to the main event of this episode, the battle between the Erics. A walks into the castle with relative ease. Nobody can really tell the difference between he and his twin, and he tells the guard who's standing watch outside of Rhaenyra's room to take the night off. This allows him to get the drop on Rhaenyra fairly easily. It's just Rhaenyra and her handmaiden Alinda. Fortunately, Mysaria's warning finds its way to E, and he storms in just in time to save Rhaenyra. The twins engage in a fight to the death, with A looking like he has the upper hand for most of it. Alinda runs off during the fight to get another guard named Sir Laurent. E manages to hold A off from getting to Rhaenyra, and Sir Laurent arrives but can't tell which one is which. A's about to strangle E to death, but E manages to get him off by clawing at an open wound. This leads to a final clash where E stabs A in the stomach, killing him. It's a terrible moment for E, and with his duty of defending Rhaenyra complete, he kills himself right after.
Had a really hard time telling these two apart during the battle. E taking his own life due to the dishonor from slaying his brother, this guy was a gem. A himself was also doing what he thought was the more honorable move. Both these guys are getting caught up as some of the first casualties in the war, and it was pretty poetic because there's going to be a lot of needless, numbing violence regardless of how pure the intentions of both sides were at the start.
Yeah man, tough moment for sure. Pour one out for the twins. Alright, that does it for our breakdown of episode 2. This show has been simply delightful so far. We'll be back with episode 3. Catch y'all later.